You're listening to the Heart Lessons podcast with me, Sarah Rieke. Real women, real stories, real faith. Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Heart Lessons podcast. This is episode 11. And today's episode of Heart Lessons features my special guest, my husband, Josh. And our intention in recording this episode was to be a resource to moms, dads, and couples walking the difficult road of infant loss. We wanted to contribute to the resources out there that can help, specifically dads, in that journey. And in this episode, we'll talk about the events of our losses, from diagnosis day to delivery story, to our time with each baby, and life afterwards. And Josh shares what his thought processes and feelings were during those times, and also answers some questions submitted by you, by blog followers and podcast listeners, including his bonding process with our babies, his strategy for supporting me through it all, and what his advice would be to a dad facing infant loss. Toward the end, we share what brought us through as a couple and what kept us connected to each other instead of growing apart. Josh also shares his prayer, or his heart lesson, through it all. And his heart lesson was that it is well with his soul. So I realize this episode is almost double what most other Heart Lessons podcast episodes have been. And honestly, that wasn't necessarily our intention, but we just started talking and then just kept going till we felt we were done. So you might need to listen to this episode in, a few installments. But I think it's definitely worth the listen and definitely worth taking time to do so. So here is my interview with my husband, Josh. Okay, Josh. Tell everybody a little bit about you and what you do.
My name is Josh Rieke. I am your husband.
Yay!
I am a certified registered nurse anesthetist, or CRNA, which means I'm an advanced practice nurse that does anesthesia. So I put people to sleep for all sorts of surgeries, make laboring moms more comfortable, things of that nature. It's a pretty good gig.
It's pretty good. We benefit from it pretty well.
Yeah, that's all right.
So how does it feel? One aspect of your job is giving epidurals. How does it feel to have a wife who's scared to death of epidurals?
That's understandable. I think that, it's certainly, we always say that epidurals are always elective procedures. So if you want it, then more power to you. If you don't want it, more power to you. Whatever works. I've always been proud that you didn't need them.
Oh, wow.
But I would have been fine if you did have them. I think I always said, if you need one, it's no big deal.
I think the part that I'm scared of the most just is holding still, like curling to a ball in the middle of a contraction and having to be still while a 12-inch needle is shoved in your back.
Yeah.
I think that's the most
People
scary
do
part
really
to me.
well. Most people do really well, actually. I guess they get to focus. Number one, they're probably changing their position into a position they haven't been in for a while, so they're not just sitting there holding still, which is good. And then you're giving them specific instructions on, sitting there, and so they're concentrating on following directions. I don't know. Most people do really, really well.
I don't know. I feel like in the moment I need to do whatever my body wants to do, and to hold still just sounds like a nightmare. So
I understand.
I'll just go through it.
Usually they only have to hold still through one contraction. Usually.
Only when you do it, because you're so smooth.
No, it's not always like that. I'd like to think that that's true, but
I think it is.
Sometimes I do my best.
Okay, well, the reason I wanted to talk to you today.
You didn't want to talk about my job?
No. I mean, and I didn't just want to look at your cute face.
Well, that's okay.
But I wanted to talk about our experience with infant loss.
Yeah.
And I wanted this podcast to be a resource to couples having to walk through it, because I think there's a ton of resources for moms, but maybe not as many for dads, and maybe not as many for couples. Yeah. So I wanted this to be something that someone could listen to and feel encouraged in the journey and maybe less alone. And I don't know, just a resource.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it ends up being helpful to people out there. I was thinking earlier that for whatever reason, I feel sort of unqualified to do this because I don't know. It surprises me that anyone would want to know what I have to say on this specific matter. So I don't know.
Well, I think your experience makes you qualified.
I guess so. Yeah. I have the experience, unfortunately.
Yeah.
But yeah. Well,
yes.
hopefully someone will find it useful.
So our first experience was with Evie, and that came in the middle. You were right in the middle of the busiest summer of your nurse anesthetist master's program.
Right.
And like basically at the beginning of that summer, you said, you're not going to see me. Between clinicals, care plans, classes. You were just like, I mean, you were barely even sleeping. So
yeah, I think so. I guess for those of you that don't know, I guess the context of nurse anesthesia school is they're either a master's or a doctorate degree program, and they liken it to trying to drink out of a fire hose. There's just a lot of information that you have to master, because your job essentially entails giving somebody what would otherwise be a lethal dose of medication to put them into an unconscious anesthetic state, and then manage that anesthetic state so that a patient can be safely brought through a surgery. So there's a lot of information that you have to absolutely own, and most programs are anywhere from 28 to 36 months. So there's not that much time to become proficient in these things. So, it's a very difficult program. The summer that we found out about Evie, it was a transition summer where I just started doing clinicals in the hospital, where I'd be working with other anesthesia providers and learning the actual hands-on on the job training. And so I was half the time in the hospital doing anesthesia, and then half the time I still had lots of classes. So I think that summer, just academically, that summer was the most difficult. And then what did we find out about Evie in July?
Yeah, like right smack in the middle of that summer.
So I was I'm already sort of up to my eyeballs in being sleepy and working hard but then excited about our baby, and then we get the bomb dropped on us right in the middle of that summer. It was very difficult time, unfortunate time for that to happen. If there was, a worse time, that was it.
So how did you handle it then? Like, what would you say your strategy was for getting through?
I mean, we've talked about this lots of times, where I really compartmentalized things very significantly, to the credit of the director of my anesthesia program. They gave me a few days to sort of do what I needed to do. They would have given me longer, but I knew I had so much work to do that, falling behind would only make things worse. So I sort of just told myself that, the news of this, and it couldn't affect what I did in school, because that would only make things worse. I couldn't let my performance diminish in school. So I sort of put that situation in its own little place, and I left it alone for a lot of, the majority of most days. I purposely I couldn't think about it, because it would mess me up. It would, you can't be thinking about it when you're in the operating room. You can't really study well if you're preoccupied. So whether or not that was the healthy way of doing it, I don't really know. But at that point, it was survival.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I definitely compartmentalized it pretty hard. So I don't know. I've read some books not about grieving, but like Navy SEALs and other military professionals, and they always talk about, you know, their family is very important to them, but when it comes to doing their job, they have to compartmentalize. They're missing their family, wanting to be at home, because, you know, if their family and their love for their family and missing their family distracts them from doing their job, that'll actually prevent them from being able to safely go home. And so that was after the fact that I've read these things. So that sort of resonated with me, because at the time I knew that I had to do well in school, and by getting too distracted, it'd only make the greater situation worse. So yeah, it was definitely just survival, and I was just doing what I had to do at the time. So although it was emotionally hard, and we would still have those moments when I would come home from school or from the hospital or whatever, and we'd talk about it. But I think those moments were fewer than you would expect under normal circumstances, because I was slammed. Yeah. There were lots of times I would wake up at 4 something to go to the hospital. I'd be at the hospital until whenever I was done, and I might come home, maybe take a nap, wake up, go work on homework until
2 a.m.
Yeah, midnight, 1 o'clock, go to bed. You're just kind of doing what you got to do. Yeah. So a lot of that summer and early fall, I was just surviving. So probably not the healthiest way to manage it, but that's what I had to do at the time, I felt like.
But I know that you did initially on the day of her diagnosis.
Oh yeah, that first week.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I mean, we cried. Yeah. We cried and talked about it a lot that first week, which probably helped me be able to compartmentalize. It's not like I didn't deal with it at all. Yeah. You're immediately faced with a situation where you anticipate, at 20 weeks, you anticipate a baby going to full term. So you have another 4 months.
Right.
And so you can kind of see the road ahead, the whole road ahead. You're going to anticipate a full term baby who's not going to be able to live afterwards. So even though it's really bad news, and you grieve for the news, because of the news, you grieve that you're going to lose your baby. The actual event doesn't happen until months later. So it's a very odd situation. I guess it would be, I don't know, but it might be similar to getting a terminal cancer type news, where you grieve in the moment, but the actual, the event of someone losing that person doesn't happen for a while. So it is odd. You almost start dealing with you see the whole path, and you deal with it all at once in the beginning. So yeah,
and
I mean,
that first
wait. Right, that first week we cried a lot. Our families were around and brought us food, and I don't know.
Yeah, we were supported.
Yeah, I don't really remember anything past the first day. I don't remember how many days I took off from school and stuff.
I think it was maybe it was
just a few days.
It was 3, but it definitely 2, but maybe 3.
Yeah.
We just kind of...
I think I had a test like the next week.
Yeah, we just had to...
Again, survival mode kicks in, and you have to get to work, and I don't know.
We just had to decide.
But I definitely remember that first day.
Yes. It's kind of unforgettable.
Yeah.
Yes. The breakdown in the elevator lobby, I think we'll never forget.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you told that story? I mean, have we really talked about it?
I think I've written about it. I haven't talked about it, but
yeah,
we can.
That's up to you, podcaster. The podcast master.
Oh man, I guess I just remember after.
We'll touch on it.
Well, you said that day that Evie was diagnosed, as soon as the first ultrasound technician said, like, did you have your 13-week ultrasound? And started, kind of questioning. You said you knew right away that something was really wrong.
I knew something was wrong. I didn't know the extent to which it was wrong. But I mean, it was like, the Han Solo, I have a bad feeling about this. She looked concerned, like legit concerned, not just like, oh, this is odd.
Right.
I could tell that she was hiding, her fears of what she was finding out. Yeah. And then we talked to the midwife, and the midwife was not, had no better news. And then we're getting sent to the ultrasound specialists at EVMS, and I just, at that point, this is not going to be good. You don't know why. They told us that there was no amniotic fluid, and they're asking Sarah, is there any amniotic fluid leaking?
They're asking me how much water I'm drinking.
Yeah, are you drinking? Like, what's going on? And they're definitely concerned. So something's bad. Something bad is happening, but you don't know to what extent. So then we went over there sort of in a daze, like, man, this is not great. Because, of course, that's a 20-week ultrasound, so we're, excited to find out whether we're having a boy or a girl. That was our focus for the day, is waiting for that. It's like Christmas morning, and then Mom and Dad are like, well, where'd all the presents go? And you're yeah, you go in expecting one thing that's really exciting, then all of a sudden that's not happening. So you go to EVMS, and then it's like the other ultrasound person does a long ultrasound, and we still don't really understand what's happening. And then the doc called us into the office, which it's like, I don't know. It's like
we were in trouble or something.
Well, it's like the TV show thing, right? Like,
yeah.
We need to talk. Okay, great. What's going on? And then you say, like, what was your version? Your version of that, you didn't quite.
I feel like
get the whole thing.
I know he like drew a diagram of a typical, like a healthy, what
kidneys,
a healthy
ureters, bladder,
right, a healthy urinary system would look like, and then he drew a picture of what they were finding on the ultrasound with Evie, and that the ureters were like atrophied, not connected. Kidneys may or may not have been there. I think the bladder, they didn't necessarily. That may or may not have been present. And I think he said something like, babies with this condition, the survival or the fatality rate is like 97%.
Right.
And I was like, oh, so there's like a 2 or 3% chance that she'll make it. And you said, Sarah, 2 or 3% means it's nothing.
Right.
And I feel like in my brain I had to connect the dots. Like I wasn't. Because he didn't come out and say, your baby's gonna die, or this is fatal. Like, it was more of he was like suggesting it, and I had to get there myself, and like the process of mentally thinking like, what? The baby's gonna die? Like, is this real? Like, that was, gosh, like.
It was the plot twist that we weren't quite prepared
I can't even describe what my brain was doing, except like literally all I could hear was my heart pounding in my ears.
Yeah. And
like no other sound almost. And I felt dizzy.
Yeah.
Like, so then we had to go from there to walk down the hall and make an appointment, my next appointment with the receptionist.
Yeah. Right. So we get devastating news.
They're like, okay, come back in 2 weeks.
And then the lady's like, yeah.
I'm like trying
morning or afternoon appointment.
Right. I'm like,
and we're just, yeah. I think at that point.
You were behind me and you were like.
Yeah, I couldn't talk.
You were, yeah.
I couldn't talk at that point. I was ready just to walk out.
And I was like trying so hard to just not. She looked very concerned, but she didn't really know what had just happened. And then I
was not going to be able to talk.
We walk out into the elevator lobby, and I had like tears in my eyes. I couldn't see very well, but I was like still just. I'm like, where's the elevator? Get to the elevator. Like, get out of this place.
Yeah.
And you just like grabbed me and like pulled me totally like into your chest, and we just. Yeah, we just like sobbed right there. And looking back, I'm like, I wonder how many people saw us.
Yeah, I think some people came out of the elevator during that.
They probably like went right back on the elevator.
Where are we?
But yeah, oh my word, I will never forget that. That was
pretty bad.
Pretty bad.
And I don't remember, how did we tell our parents and stuff? We texted them, I think. I don't remember what we
No,
did.
I don't think
remember.
we texted them. My mom was at our house watching Micah.
Right.
So I told her.
Called
and then
her?
I told her
When we
she
got
was at the
home.
house. Right.
Oh.
When we got home. I don't think we told anybody in the car.
Right.
And then I think you called your parents. And then everybody ended up
Right.
coming over
Right.
that evening. Or,
Yeah.
later the afternoon, evening. So, anyway. Ugh, crazy
Yeah.
stuff.
I remember my brothers coming over,
Yeah.
which was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was rough.
Rough.
That was rough. And almost more rough knowing that that was just the beginning of what,
Yeah.
what would happen. It's pretty brutal.
So, what was your processing like? I guess like you said, it was similar. We could liken it maybe to a terminal illness, like
Right.
as her due date. Her due date was November 30th.
Mm-hmm.
So, what did it feel like for you as the time was drawing closer? Did you feel like, I don't know,
This is dread.
dread? It's a
Because
good word.
you just have a pit in your stomach about the whole situation every time it crosses your mind. And again, so I was very purposefully compartmentalizing this, where I wasn't trying to deal with this all day, every day.
Like actively, like
Right, yeah. I
yeah.
mean, I was actively, putting this to the side as much as possible so I could do my work and do a good job and all that. So, every time it would cross my mind, it was just dread, a pit in your stomach dropping, because you just know. So you grieve initially, very acutely, very intensely initially, and then you're just kind of slowly processing and grieving for months because you know it's coming. And then I just remember thinking that I can't even imagine what it's going to be like to go to the hospital and experience what I knew was going to happen. I just couldn't really fathom what that was going to be. And just dreading you going into labor and dreading having to do it. I think that was all.
Yeah. Well, one thing that kind of helped, I think, is that I feel like looking back, Evie has a really dramatic and kind of funny birth story. I don't know, like looking back, I feel like we can kind of chuckle about it. Even in the moment,
I mean,
we
it was
we
so
kind of
absurd.
could.
It was just so absurd. That whole thing was so stupid.
Well, I wouldn't say stupid.
I don't know. It was like a TV.
That's
was like
for
a
sure.
TV moment.
It was
just so
overly dramatic.
Oh, just ridiculous. Ridiculous.
So I have written about this before. If you want to
might
read
as
like
well.
the full thing, you can visit my blog and search Evie's birth story. But basically, she was 3 weeks early, and so I wasn't anticipating labor at all. And by
You've been having Braxton Hicks
yes,
contractions, and
the
so
lack of
that,
amniotic fluid made them painful.
right.
Even the Braxton Hicks. So,
You're dealing with it for a while.
Right. So I wasn't exactly sure how to gauge the pain because it had, it was all very uncomfortable. So long story short, by the time I told Josh, like, I think this is it. I think we should head to the hospital. And maybe the next sentence.
Yeah, I
out of
started
my
making
mouth-
phone. I think I called my mom because they
Yeah.
were going to come watch the kids.
Well, no, we just had Mike at the time.
Or we were going to, right?
Yeah.
Micah.
Baby
We were going to
Micah.
drop him off. Or
No, I think she was going to come to the house.
Yeah, whatever. I'm like getting on the
Something.
phone, and then I hear like yell like, ah! Like, Josh, we need to go. Like, it became urgent.
Yes.
Very quickly.
Yes.
Very quickly. And I remember either I was already on the phone or I called my mom back, and I was like, you need to get here right now. Like right now, we're leaving right now. And then I realized
somewhere, yeah.
I hung up or whatever, and then I realized she's like, it's time to get in the car.
Like basically we were at home and I could feel her head
Right.
Like
Sarah's,
with my fingers.
Right. Sarah's like, I'm gonna have the baby right now, or something like that.
I was like, call 911. The baby's coming right now.
And I said, no.
Right.
No, he's not.
Like looking back, I'm like, only my husband would tell his wife, like in the middle of labor, like
we are not. We are not
only you.
having this baby at home on accident. Like, holy cow! So, I told you to get in the car.
Yeah.
And I grabbed Micah and I'm like, I'm sorry, buddy, we have to go.
He wasn't 18 months. He was like 22 months. 21, 22 months. Because his birthday was in December.
Right.
Is in December. It's the beginning of November.
So he was all like, okay, cool.
And
then I just put him in the car seat. And I get in the car. We start driving 70, 80 miles an hour down residential.
35 miles?
Yeah, 25, 35, 45, blowing stoplights. I mean, slowing down to make sure we're not going to kill ourselves. But
I was like backwards on the seat. I couldn't
you couldn't sit down. So your knees are on the seat facing backwards.
Yeah, I was like hugging the seat backwards.
And Micah was like, vroom, because I'm
like
like accelerating as fast as possible.
Car.
Yeah, so Micah's having a great time with my insane driving. And we made the 15 or 20, like the 15-minute trip to the hospital in, I mean, I don't know, 6 or 7 minutes.
It felt like forever though. Don't you remember at one point you were like, okay, babe, we're halfway there. And I was
like,
only halfway. Like,
yeah.
what? Faster.
And then when we get there, for whatever, I mean, I worked at this hospital as an ICU nurse. So I hadn't even thought about where we would go. And I certainly wasn't considering pulling up to the hospital emergently. Yeah. But I pull up to the ER entrance and realize that's the children's hospital ER entrance. And I was like, oh, great, that's not right.
Oh, I didn't know that, actually.
Yeah, I initially
Obviously, I wasn't paying attention.
Right, and now I'm like kind of, not panicking, but now I'm really getting anxious because Sarah's like trying to deliver the baby in the car, and I pull up to the wrong entrance.
Actually, to my credit, I was trying to not deliver the baby in the car. That was really hard.
Right, yeah, of course. And so I pull around, and then there's just another hospital entrance, like a side entrance, and I roll the car up and run in, and there's 2 security guards, and I yell at them that my wife's having a baby right now, and we need a wheelchair. And they're just looking at me and moving as slow as possible.
You're like, guys,
for
real.
Yeah.
Gosh, what was that one? His name that
it was like Leroy, or I don't know. It was.
Oh my gosh,
Leon
I always forget
or something.
Oh man, it'll come to me. So
I don't know. And I was like, "You gotta run, Leon!" Whatever the guy's name was. You gotta run, Leon. And he was like, and he still was just like looking at me like, yeah.
Because how many
heard
people
this all before?
Right, exactly. How many people pull up to ER like the baby's coming?
You gotta run. Well, then of course I still have Micah in the car, so I had to go back and grab Micah. So he's going down the hall with you. So I'm like, okay, that's good at least. And then I just turn around and get Micah, and I turned the car off, and I just left it. It was in like the pull through zone. I just left it.
Probably illegal.
So me and Micah are behind you running, trying to catch up. Meanwhile,
so the security guard, whose name I still can't remember, it'll come to me. I feel like Buford comes to mind, but like that's.
I don't think that's it.
I don't know. Maybe I've been watching too much Phineas and Ferb. Anyway, so
who's Buford on Phineas and Ferb?
He's like the bully.
Oh, okay.
Come on.
I don't remember that.
So anyway, he's like pushing me, truly sauntering. Like we are not going very fast.
You gotta run.
And I'm like, no, this baby's coming. I'm like trying to tell him, I mean, I'm in agony, right? I'm trying to make the words come out, but I'm saying like, this baby needs a neonatologist. Like, I need help. Please go faster. She's coming. Like, by the time I got in the whatever, her head was out.
Right.
So as we're wheeling down the hallway, I was like, hurry. And with whatever other contraction, I mean, I don't know at what point, like I had no time reference, but I like pushed her body all the way out and pulled her up. Mm-hmm. And I remember him all of a sudden behind me, I hear, whoa. And he starts going faster at that point. Yeah. So he starts going faster. Finally. And then obviously she didn't, like, that was actually my first thought when I first saw her. I was like, she does not look good. She was like not even blue, like she was like gray.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I didn't know what that meant. But, so I think he
So
called...
he rolled you into the ER.
No, he didn't, because we were intercepted by, like, a charge nurse or something.
Yeah,
and she started going really quickly and calling, like, you know, blue baby.
So she's yelling blue baby, and they're rolling into like one of the trauma bays.
Yeah.
And I'm getting to the ER right as she's getting wheeled in, and they're about to, you know, attack the situation appropriately, as if, you know, you have a blue baby.
Yeah, like full, like,
and so
safety
now,
measures.
yeah, and so this is just the worst possible
because we had in my chart, like, previously discussed, like, we wanted comfort measures. We were like...
Right, we had talked to the neonatologist about...
We had planned it for lack of what it may have seemed.
We had thought about this moment for months. So many appointments and all this stuff. And, you know, Sarah delivers the baby in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
So then I have to... I'm like, can I have your attention, please? And I kind of, in a few sentences, spell out the situation, and that it's going to be do not resuscitate, do not intubate, comfort measures only, because, you know, the baby's diagnosis and everything. And everyone's looking at me like, what?
Yeah, because they didn't know who you were.
Well, yeah, I just came in and I was like, everybody listen up.
Right.
And yeah.
And they pushed you out.
And try to... No, they didn't push me up. I mean, like, you know, in 3 or 4 sentences, I'm trying to express the seriousness of what's going on and that we planned this out, whatever. And then, so yeah, then one of the docs grabs me and comes, like, talk to me outside. So I tell her again you know, what's going on. And I think the nursing supervisor was right there, which I also just happened to know from my ICU days. And I don't know.
Well, they asked me. Well,
I probably were asking you separately, I guess.
Yeah, because obviously, you know, the cord is still connected, so I'm very clearly this baby's mother.
Right, and they don't know who I am,
and they didn't
technically.
know who you were. Right, and so I, like, could not. I mean, I was so overwhelmed, truly.
Right, the situation
I mean, like,
was
it was
insanely overwhelming.
And, like, just the birth experience itself, in any way, in even a calm circumstance, is a pretty overwhelming experience, like with the adrenaline and everything. So I feel like I couldn't make a sentence, and I was like, they were like, what should we do? What do you want us to do? And I was like, just get my husband. And so then at that point, I think they realized that we were
And I'd had some time to explain the situation to one of the docs that was there. And then I came back in and I was telling the team again, like, what was going on. And by that time, they were cleaning the baby up in, like, the warmer. And they had, like, they'd taken you to another side to make sure that you were okay because you needed an IV and all that sort of thing.
Actually, did they give me an IV? Mm-hmm. Oh, they did? I don't even remember. Because I was in a wheelchair and somehow I got on a hospital bed. Right. I don't even remember that process.
Right.
Somehow it happened.
So
I guess I got an IV.
Yeah. So, I mean, they were over there and you were talking, so I knew you were fine. So then I was just with her. And
which we had talked about. Remember I said?
Yeah.
I said I'd like you to just
if
go
it
be
comes
with
to
her.
Choices.
Yeah,
right.
like, I'll be fine. They'll make sure I'm fine, but just...
Right. So...
That was important to me.
Yeah, that was a wild and crazy story.
But I feel like it gives us something to laugh about. Like, you know, just... I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe it was Rupert. Was that his name? Rupert? It started with an R, I think.
Maybe Ralph or... Now we're just saying names. Randy.
No. Ugh.
Gandalf's. That was probably it.
No, it was probably not Gandalf.
No. Gandalf would have known what to do.
So, Evie's birth and death experience. How did that impact you? What do you feel like you remember most about our time with her, like in the hospital, when she was alive,
mm-hmm.
and then also afterwards? What do you feel like was the most impactful for you? Or maybe something that you, like, think about still, like...
Man, I mean, that was just such an intense... such an intense few hours. I remember consciously thinking, you know, to soak in these moments as best as I could, to try to memorize her face, to try to, I don't know, make as strong a connection as I could in a way that I could remember. And I remember it was nice that she was doing, she wasn't doing well, but she was doing well enough that we bathed her while she was still alive. So we gave her like a little washcloth, sponge bath, and dressed her. And I can't remember who started, except, in the room that we were in, we had some close friends along with our family that were all there, and someone started singing Happy Birthday, and I just lost it. That's one of the strongest emotional memories I think I can remember of any part of that situation. Probably one of the strongest emotional memories in my life. And they were sung Happy Birthday to Evie, and it was sweet and intensely sad at the same time. And I still think that's one of the saddest things I've ever seen. Even though I appreciated it, it was very sweet. And I think the sweetness of it is what made it so crushingly sad.
Yeah.
That was amazing. I remember Micah. What did he have for her?
A little
a giraffe or something?
No, it was like a ladybug security blanket.
Oh yeah,
kind of like a little.
And he was really eager to do it, but he was also nervous.
Well,
like it's a little baby,
and
there's people. Yeah, there's people all around. So he sort of got shy, and he threw it at her.
Yeah,
he threw it at her, which was pretty funny.
I'd been trying to prepare him for this special moment, you can give it to the baby, and he was on board.
And he was still in the moment very eager to do it, but. Got shy. Caved. Yeah, he got shy.
He just tossed it in her general direction. Yeah. And we all laughed. It was
that was fun. That was funny.
A special memory for sure.
Yeah, that was good.
Did you feel helpless at all? Did you feel like...
No. No. I knew there wasn't anything to do. It was just to be present, to attempt to make memories in the time that we had, to attempt to love on her as much as we could. So, no, I didn't feel helpless. Yeah, and there was nothing to do. So, it wasn't a situation, we weren't fighting for her life or anything at that point. We were just trying to enjoy her and be with her, so.
Do you feel so after, I think it was 10 days or so after she passed away, we had her funeral and memorial service. And for her memorial service, you put together a video or the slideshow of pictures and, sang some songs. Do you think that helped you in your grieving process? That you could actively do something to honor her? Did that help?
Yeah, I think putting together the slideshow, the video. I guess it was a slideshow.
Yeah, it was pictures.
And there were some videos. I put some of the videos that people had taken as well. So yeah, that was good, and being able to see the pictures and the videos and kind of, dwell on a little bit on the good parts was good.
Did it give you some closure, you think? Did you feel...
Yeah, I think it helped. And the service itself, I think, felt like it gave me closure. Some closure. It was very heartfelt, and a lot of people came, which was very sweet.
Yeah.
A lot of people, it was a lot of people had our backs and were also affected by it, to some extent. And it was a very sweet ceremony. And I remember I sang the hymn, It Is Well With My Soul, and I think that had been on my heart since we found out. That was sort of, an important heart message for me to tell the Lord that, it's okay, I'm okay,
Yeah.
That it's so, no matter the situation that we're going through, that was my prayers. I understand, it's okay. It's well with my soul. I'm not gonna harbor resentment or anything. So I think that was sort of that was my heart lesson. Trademark.
That's supposed to come at the end.
Yeah. No, that was my one of my big things. And I didn't mention it earlier. You're talking about the processing it and all the grief. The Job story was, I think that first day when we found out about Evie, I read the whole book of Job either that day or like, I don't know, that day, the next day, something like that. I read the whole book of Job because that just had popped in my mind like, man. So that really resonated with me, that in the Job story that he was having everything, including his family, taken away from him. So certainly he was experiencing intense grief and all the crazy stuff that was going on. And I just remember one of the big epiphanies was, I hadn't really been around anyone who had something like this happen to them. We hadn't had a lot of loss in our families or our friends. And I just remember thinking, being struck by the fact that everyone, the heavenly hosts and God and the devil were watching Job and just watching and seeing what was gonna happen. And I remember thinking, so everyone's watching and waiting to see what's gonna happen and what we're gonna do. And then in our immediate situation with our church friends and family, I felt that acute sense of people are watching to see how we do, and how we do can really affect other people, and for good or for bad, depending on how we handle the situation. And so I definitely felt a sense of responsibility to do the right thing. And not that we couldn't be sad, that was just normal, but that,
like, the attitude.
there's a certain way that we had to handle this within, what we said we had believed in this whole time. Like, it was a put up or shut up moment. Like, your faith is meaningless if it crumbles at the first sign of trouble. And so I felt like, well, this is our Job test. And if we said that, our faith in God and our relationship with Jesus was important before, then it certainly needs to be important now. And, this personal tragedy shouldn't affect that. So, yeah, that was important. And I think that It Is Well, the song, had been my prayer since we found out about it too, because I guess that was my resolution to our Job event, was I had to always be willing to tell the Lord that that I'm trusting in Him, and that even though we're going through this extremely difficult personal loss, that it was going to be well with my soul. So.
And then unfortunately, not quite 3 years later, we had to do this again. And so, how was the experience with Charlie different for you? I know we were in a completely different phase of life, which, it wasn't as an intense phase of life as when you were in school, maybe, but I don't know, what was that like? What was that like for you? How was the experience different as far as where it fell in our phase of life?
Well, I think my first reaction and my first thought was it's all too familiar.
Yeah.
You've had the same appointment before, they've told you the same things before, and you immediately, again, you see your path is now, set before you for the next 4 or so months. You you know exactly what it's going to feel like, and that same sense of dread comes down and sinks in because you know exactly what this is going to feel like. And that was my comment, was I can't believe we have to do this again, because you can just see the next 4 or 5 months of just grieving and struggling through the same situation again. It was
Do you feel like you dreaded it more knowing what was going to happen?
I don't know if I could have possibly dreaded it more, but you dreaded it differently. I guess like
Like, you know, the moments
when you
to
go
dread.
right the first time you're pregnant and you haven't gone into labor yet, right? You're sort of nervous
Right,
about it,
exactly.
but you're not exactly sure what you're going to get into. You have an idea, but I guess I was
The
more...
second time you know the
Yeah, you know
pain.
exactly what it's going to feel like.
Right, and so that's a
And
little bit more
you-
nerve-wracking, maybe.
Maybe. It's slightly different, but yeah, it was a familiar... all of it felt familiar, which was weird. Yeah, it impacted... The impact was still felt, but it just felt like great. Yeah, I don't know. I don't even remember the rest of that day, I don't think. I don't remember what we did.
It was similar.
I
Everybody.
remember driving home and being like, I can't believe this.
Did you feel angry?
I don't think I actually felt angry as much as I was like... Annoyed seems trivial. Not annoyed. I mean, just... Yeah, shaking my head. Like, I can't believe this is happening again. Just almost disgusted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was your thought process the second time between diagnosis day and delivery? Like, did you feel like you had to work through anything new or different the second time around? Or was it all just kind of like, in some ways I feel like for me, I just had to fall back on what I had already processed.
Right.
And in some ways it was like easier,
right.
although not easy in the sense that like, oh, that was easy. Just...
There was like a muscle memory to the grief.
Right. I mean, like riding a bike.
Right. I think some of it felt the same. It was different because I wasn't so intensely distracted with school. So I wasn't in just survival mode where I couldn't think about it. I had to put it off to the side and not deal with it. You know, so that was different. We were a little bit more present together,
right,
for those few months.
Because you were just working like a normal person.
I would come
like
come
normal
home
hours.
I didn't have to do homework and all that sort of thing. So
yeah,
at least we were more present together, and I don't know, we had more conversations about it probably. But yeah, I mean, what is there to talk about? At the same time, we know exactly what this is going to be like. Everything we were hearing was like the same.
Right.
It's very weird.
And it wasn't as busy of a... Well, I guess it was a similar time frame because he was born in September and she was November. So it was kind of over the summer that we were still dealing with, like the grief and everything.
When did we find out?
May 21st. Almost a year coming up. Anyway.
I guess the scary thing was that was coming right in the middle of my job change. That's what made it really...
Well, that's what I was going to say.
That's what made it really
You weren't crazy busy with school, but you were in the process of getting a new job.
Right.
New insurance.
Right.
New house.
Right.
Lots of things.
Right. Yeah, that was...
So it just didn't fit. It felt like it didn't fit in our life. Like a lot of really good, positive things were happening.
Right. Yeah.
It just was like so weird.
Yeah, there were a lot of really... The new job was a really... That's the job I'm in now. At the time, it was a really great opportunity for me.
A completely unexpected blessing.
It just fell into our laps. A really excellent professional opportunity to advance. So I was super excited about that. We had a baby on the way, and we were living in a little like 750 square foot house or whatever, something so tiny. So we were going to get a new house and have a growing family. And so many good things, and then this, like, wow. And so, yeah, it definitely just, it was incongruent with what else was going on. And even though we were grieving that at the time we thought we were having a girl, so at the time that we thought we were going to lose another little girl, I started the new job, which was cool. We were building the house. So we were still excited about those things. And then it was also, the most different thing was, in the meantime, we had Jocelyn. And so we had Micah, and at the time Jossie was
1.
And so
Just turned 1.
yeah, we had at the so many good things in our life that we really were enjoying. And then this black cloud, very dark black cloud hovering over us. It was very weird, because really our daily life felt
good.
Almost, because we knew, I don't know, we processed the grief very quickly from the time we found out. I don't know. I think we both knew that
we knew the deal.
The worst was yet to come. At the time, that's the weirdest feeling for both, is because you get this really terrible news, but really the baby's doing fine. In the uterus, is the baby's doing good.
Currently, there was nothing to worry about.
The baby kicks, moves around. You have ultrasounds and see the baby. The baby moves, and Sarah's doing well. So on the surface, it feels like things are fine. It's just the knowledge that it's not going to end up being fine,
right? Which
is hard. So really, our daily lives felt good, like things were good almost. And then you just have this, but this is going to happen. Yeah. When it happens, it's going to be really sad again.
There was a concern when I was pregnant because they had found placenta previa, so placenta covering the cervix, which would make a vaginal delivery impossible without hemorrhaging and death. Right. And also the baby was breached. So we were, for a very long time, for the majority of, between diagnosis and delivery, for most of that time, we thought I was going to have a C-section.
Yeah, and I was really upset about that because our experience with Evie was sweet. Like, we had our own special moment in, the hospital room with some friends and family. And I was all too familiar with the OR environment. I just couldn't imagine having that experience where, in a C-section, in the middle of surgery, where you're going to have a baby come out that's going to die. And just like Evie, we had no idea how long Evie would live. We didn't know if it was going to be 30 seconds or 30 minutes. And she was with us for 4 hours, which was very nice. So what if we have 5 minutes with Charlie, which again, we still didn't know it was going to be a boy. So what if we only have 5 minutes with this baby, and it's going to be in the OR where Sarah is laying on a table
drugged up.
Yeah, with a blue drape, separating her top half from her surgical half, and how that's not going to be good at all. There's going to be a room full of people. Yeah, I was really worried about that. So that was one really nice. That was probably the only nice little plot twist to that story, was that the placenta previa went away. So that was really nice. So
and the
Sarah could just have a regular delivery, and we at least could try to have our own moment.
The baby still stayed breech, but considering our circumstances, that
was the least of their worries. Yeah, they're we're fine.
Yeah, everyone felt comfortable. Everyone in that practice felt comfortable vaginally delivering a breech baby. So, the consensus was it would be better for me, since we knew that prognosis was poor. And not poor, the worst. Yeah. The worst it could be.
Yeah.
So they knew, or they felt and advised us that, attempting a vaginal breech delivery was best.
Yeah, they weren't worried about that at all.
Yeah.
I don't think we really had any continued conversations about that. It was just it's fine.
Right. Yeah. So just like Evie had her crazy dramatic birth experience that we can chuckle about. Like I can appreciate that.
Definitely a story.
Well, Charlie's birth story was, at least we were at the hospital.
Yeah, it was more controlled. It was fast and furious when the time came, but
we left. Like,
but
I
we at
walked
least-
myself into
Yeah.
the whatever place, the OB.
yeah, labor and delivery
place.
floor.
Yeah, thank you. I walked there myself.
Yeah, and
So I was-
we went into like the little examination room. They put monitors on. They wanted
20 minutes.
They wanted to monitor you for 20 minutes to see your contractions, to see if you're actually
think
in
I
labor.
was-
So you're in like in triage,
Was I like 5 to 6 centimeters when they checked me?
something like that, like something
like,
very
decent, like-
yeah. But you were like right in the
But I was still talking.
right. It was still very controlled,
Yeah.
and we think we have a few hours of labor ahead, and
So maybe we got there around what?
everyone's moving slow and
Yeah.
not really worried about it. One of the residents came and talked to us. What time did we get there? I don't remember.
Yeah,
it was after dark.
Well, no, it was in the morning. It was like, I mean, because we left here at like 3:30 a.m. So maybe we got there around 4, possibly. I feel like he was born a little after
Maybe.
5 a.m.
I
or
feel like I have
something
no
that.
concept of time
Ugh. Well, anyway, worst parents ever. Can't remember these.
because we. Yeah, did you wake me up in the?
Yeah, it was.
You
It was
woke
the
me
middle of
up,
the night.
Like, hey, it's
Yeah.
happening.
I mean,
And
we
you're
left
oh,
at like
okay.
3:30.
Really?
Yeah, it was. Maybe it was 4, but yeah. I mean,
Wow, okay.
what's a few minutes? It was the middle. It was super early or
Yeah.
middle of the night, however you want to consider it.
Okay.
So anyway.
But yeah, the residents come and we like tell them the
And
situation.
we were
They're like,
trying
oh, okay.
they were advising, since they knew it was going to be a breech vaginal delivery, they were advising me to get an epidural, and I was like nervous about it, but I thought like, you
Yeah,
know, in the
like,
multitude
maybe-
of counselors, their safety, that was kind of my thing. I was like, okay, you know, everyone's telling me this would be the best thing, and so I'm like, okay, you know, I'll do it.
Yeah.
So I think after the 20 or so minutes of monitoring, and maybe I was in the room for maybe like 10 more minutes while they, I don't know, prepped the delivery room or something, my contractions got like...
Yeah, and they started wheeling you to the room,
Where I
and
c- where I
pretty
could
much
deliver.
right when we got to the room, you started making the laboring sounds that indicated to me, since I've been there with you, that you were transitioning. And last they checked, you were like 4 or 5
I don't think I was 4.
centimeters,
I was
6.
definitely 5
but
to 6.
But you were like in...
But yeah.
Yeah, like things were progressing.
Right.
But it's not time. But you were making transitioning sounds.
Well,
and
I remember
you were-
having to get from that like wheelie bed or whatever you
Right.
call it into like the stationary bed, and I remember being like, oh, how am I going to do this? Like I
Right.
did like a 1, 2, 3 count in my head, like, and just like shoved my whole like huge whale of a body like
just
onto the
went.
bed,
And
and then
then
I
I
had
told-
to face backwards because
Yeah, it was time.
like I was...
And I told the nurse, like, you need to go get help. This is happening right now. And she was like, okay. And I could tell that she was thinking, you know, she's getting together a list of things she has to get done.
like no time for a list.
And when she's doing, she's still not really doing much. And she's like, okay. I was like, no, seriously, you need to call for help. And like, this is like, she's going to have
And
a
I was,
baby
I
right
was
now.
like, if I'm gonna get an epidural, somebody needs to get in here fast. And you're
Yeah.
like, babe, there's not gonna be time.
So yeah, I remember the nurse grabbed some IV stuff, and she's like, and then
But I was like,
then
pushing.
you're like, I need to push, and I was like looking at the nurse like, you need to call for help, and then she calls in, I need everyone to come in here, and then pretty soon, like, yeah, everyone
There's a
runs
lot of
in,
people.
and you're like screaming and
I was
pushing.
literally screaming.
Yeah,
I had no self-control.
and it was like 2 minutes later, there was a baby.
I don't know if it was 2 minutes.
It was so fast, babe.
I
You
think we were in
pushed,
that
like,
room for 10 minutes. The
I-
pushing process was a process because he was breech.
The pushing,
And I remember
it was like 2 pushes.
All right.
It was so fast. It was crazy.
Maybe in my
fast.
memory it felt much more
Long.
torturous.
Yeah, it was very fast.
Because of the breech position, I feel like my pushing did not feel as...
Well, and they were telling you to kind of wait. I
what's
think
the word? productive. There you
Right.
go. Didn't feel as productive as the...
When you were for a second, you were sort of out of control. Like,
Yeah.
the labor was happening to you. You weren't, yeah.
I wasn't managing it.
No, you were freaking out, understandably. And sort of you gathered yourself. Everyone kind of came.
Well, you like came behind my shoulders and you were like...
Right,
You're like,
I was talking
not
to
whispering in my ear, but like instructing me.
I was yelling in your ear.
You weren't.
No, I was. No, yeah, I was.
You were being authoritative and like...
Well, yeah, like, yeah. I was trying to help you gather yourself, and then everyone was there, and we tried to get you in a position where everyone could help you, because you were when you were on all fours, that no one really knew what to do to help you. Ugh. You were sort of out of control. So like you kind of gathered yourself. Everyone was there, and
I remember screaming. I was like, I can't do this. You're like, babe, you're doing it.
You're doing it. Like,
I'm like, no, someone else do it.
You couldn't stop it if you wanted to at this point, babe. Yeah.
It's funny.
Yeah. Once you got yourself together, and it was like 2 pushes. It was 1 push, and like the baby was half out, and the next push, everything.
Oh, that's good.
and then you were.
Well, then they like put him on my chest.
But we still thought it was like...
Yeah, we still...
Is it a girl?
I asked.
Is it a girl? Right.
I was like, hi, baby. Because I guess I was calling... We were going to name her Kate.
Right.
And I think maybe I was saying her name, or I was saying, hi, sweet girl, or something.
It is a girl, right?
And she's like, yep. I know the nurse was like, yep. But she's like, oh, wait, hang on, let me check. She's like, nope, it's a boy.
And then we just looked at each other and just laughed.
She's like, of course.
Right, of course.
This was our moment. Like, Evie's was like the crazy wheelchair delivery, and Charlie's was like... Surprise!
It's a girl. I mean, wait, it's a boy.
So luckily, though, we had...
Sarah had thought through this.
Yeah, I had, because we had like 3 ultrasounds, and in 2 of them, they're like, we think it's probably a girl. I'm like, well, those aren't very definitive words.
Right.
And then in one ultrasound, she's like, I'm pretty sure it's a boy. And so I knew there was a decent chance that it wasn't a girl.
Right.
And... I thought this is not the situation to be unprepared for, like,
yeah,
you know,
that's not a curveball.
It's not like we could be like, haha, we brought him home in a pink dress, and you know now he's, you know, it was like I kind of need to make sure we have a little boy outfit, so we did, and luckily we had like mentioned a name that we thought.
Right.
Like it was like one time in the car, we're like, what do you think about this? And you're like, yeah, that's cool.
That's a good name, but I mean, yeah.
But we weren't, yeah.
We didn't put a lot of thought into backup gender names.
Right.
Yeah.
But anyway, so that was
that. That was funny.
And he was pretty fragile, so
Yeah, he wasn't doing well.
And
right
probably the breech. I mean, I feel like it was the breech delivery, which makes you
no.
feel really yucky,
no.
But
I don't think it was the breech delivery at all. I just think he was worse off. The breech delivery had nothing to do with it.
Well, it makes their heart rate like, I don't know. Anyways.
No.
What do you know? It's not like you know anything about medicine. So anyway,
no, he was just a broken baby. He wasn't doing well.
What did it feel like for you to like all of a sudden have the, like, I don't know, all of a sudden be a different baby? Did it feel?
It was very weird. I mean, it was, it doesn't change your emotions in the,
Right.
But the whole pregnancy, you're thinking like this little girl, Kate, little Kate, baby Kate, and then it's like, oh, it's Charlie, baby Charlie. Huh? Yeah, it was cool, but just weird.
Yeah, very strange.
Yeah, it was funny.
Anyway, so he was probably with us for maybe 30 minutes, if.
Yeah, I think it was actually less than that.
He was like being passed around to family, and then by the time he came back to me, I knew he was gone. And so it's like somewhere. I don't really know.
Yeah, because you were holding him, and I had noticed that he wasn't breathing anymore.
Well, I knew, and that his like temperature was.
Yeah.
Bad.
But even from the beginning, I knew he wasn't gonna live very long. His Evie was at least breathing. And I don't think he ever really had
chest rise and fall.
Yeah, I could tell that Charlie's respiratory effort was just not. It was not adequate. So, I knew he didn't have very long. It was still very sweet, and yeah, it was just shorter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about his birth experience, or like our time with him, or his death, like impacted you the most, do you think? What do you remember most from like our little time in the hospital with him, that 12-hour period?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. The thing that I guess my best memory of it was when we had the kids that were, Jocelyn and Micah were both sitting with you, and they were very, very sweet, and I think that was really cool. And I think maybe my focus after he was here was a little bit different, because I wanted to make sure that the kids were around and that you got to spend like a bit of time with all of them. So I think with Evie, I was very focused. I mean, I was very, I don't know, I guess partially selfish you're enveloped in your own emotional process. And I think with Charlie, I was a little bit more detached, not in a bad way, but I was trying to make sure that you're okay and that the kids were with you. And I don't know. I just remember that being at the forefront of my mind, that Jocelyn and Micah get to have some time. And
With the BB, that's what Jocelyn kept saying.
To BB.
BB.
Yeah, she was so sweet.
What do you feel like your grief is like now? I mean, we are 3.5 years removed from Evie's passing, and maybe approaching 8 months for Charlie.
Yeah.
So what does it feel like for you right now?
It feels, I don't know, it feels weird, and it just feels differently at different times. There's a lot of days where, and that's we have Micah and Jocelyn, so again, our everyday lives are really great and filled with kids. And
happy, super
happy. Right, and Micah and Jocelyn are such great kids, and so we have a lot of good distractions. And then occasionally you'll sort of, think that we actually have, we have 4 kids. And then you think what would have been like to have 4 kids in the house. And it's impressive to think that you've been pregnant 4 times. Like, you've had 4 babies.
Yeah.
We've just only come home with 2. And that's like sort of those thoughts are very heartbreaking. And think of what our family would have been if we could have brought all of our babies home. I think that's what makes me the most sad at this point. But, I was thinking earlier, I really didn't put any thought into what we were going to talk about. We didn't talk about what...
No, we didn't.
No, so...
Except you knew like what we were going to talk about.
Right, I'm aware of what happens on the podcast, and I understood the subject matter. But just thinking about when I was just taking a shower, that we were a few things, just the way that our lives were set up, which sort of were blessings in disguise. And the first was that our first baby, Micah, was fine. And so then when we had Evie, and I was so busy with school, at least, Sarah did a lot of the grieving really by herself, and I wasn't very present for her to help, which was, I'm sure, maybe we should talk about that, but I just wasn't around. I was doing stuff in the hospital all day, every day, and so a lot of her grief...
There were even months that you didn't even live at home.
Right.
Your clinicals took you out of state and out of area.
I had out rotations that I had to be out of town for extended periods of time. So, really, that year after Evie came, you did a lot of that grieving and processing by yourself, and I think having Micah with you helped a lot.
Yeah, agreed, for sure.
Because you had to take... so there's some sense of duty where you can't sit in bed all day and just not do anything. You're not allowed to just slip into a depression because the little boy needs breakfast. And
right.
And so there's certain things you're just going to be forced to do. But then you also have that object of your affection, and you're still going to have the pleasure of seeing him grow up and learn new things and say new things and do things. And so there's still that bright spot. And so when I was in the shower, I was just thinking of all those of you that might be listening that I can't imagine what it would have been like to lose Evie without having Micah already. If Evie was our first baby, I can't imagine how much more it would have just crushed us. And I think, is it Billy and Holly lost their babies, and I don't know. I just think those situations somehow would still be unbelievably more difficult than what we had to go through. What we had to go through was we still lost our baby. But Micah helped a lot. And then we had Jocelyn. And so when we found out about Charlie, we have 2 kids at home. And Jocelyn, we felt just such a huge sense of redemption almost, where we wanted to have a boy and a girl, and we lost our Evie girl. And then Sarah gets pregnant again, and it's a girl again, which we were really excited about. We were both really wanting to have another girl. And so we got to have Jocelyn, and she's just such a good baby, such a happy little girl. And so there's a lot of healing that happened, I think, in both of our hearts when Jocelyn came. And so that was a really huge blessing to us before Charlie. And so there's just the way that it turned out, some of it, I don't know. It's not, it still was very difficult, but a little bit of timing blessings, I think, with the way that our kids that we brought home fell in line with the kids that we didn't get to bring home. It made it a little, if it's possible, it made it a little easier maybe.
Yeah, I think that's like the Lord, going before us almost, and he doesn't leave you, forsake you. He knows what you need, and I think that was part of his being gentle
maybe
on us, even though
a little grace in between storms.
Yeah, so I definitely agree. And Jossie, even when Charlie passed away, she was only 14 months, so I still felt like I had a baby. I mean, she was a baby. She wasn't walking yet.
Right.
She took a long time. So that, that helped. And not that it wasn't difficult, but like you said, the Lord just gave us things
the way that
to soften the blows.
The way that our situation worked out, we had some child healing through children, which was very fortunate. I think it definitely made a huge difference. So I'm sad for those that didn't get those little blessings. I wouldn't want to think about what that would feel like.
I wonder if this is about compartmentalizing, but I feel like from observing your grief process, from my perspective,
all of your notes that you've been taking behind my back.
Like watching him from behind like a plant.
Two-way glass.
No, I have not been doing that.
Okay.
That's creepy.
That's good.
But I think what I remember with Evie's diagnosis, and then when she passed away, and Charlie's diagnosis, and then when he passed away, I think you had a distinct burst of like crying and grieving in each of those moments, and then you didn't cry that much, like those moments, and then it was kind of, I don't want to say over for you, but those were like, what do you think about that? Do you remember those moments?
Yeah. Well, I feel like Evie, I cried a lot more. With Evie, I felt like that first week when we found out, we sort of cried sporadically every day for a week. And then I had to get busy, and so that sort of got turned off. And then when Evie came, I think I cried a lot. And I probably wept once. Like,
right. I think that's what I'm talking about. Like,
I
like
broke
an actual like
all
breakdown.
the way down.
Yeah.
Maybe like near the elevators when we found out, and then like just one time, I think I just, completely out of control, sobbing for like a short period.
Yeah.
And then with Charlie, I think I just had one, like right after he
Was born.
Right after he was born, yeah. Right after
Well, I
he
think
was
also
born.
in the initial ultrasound room, I remember like you were like crying, like I was still
Okay.
laying on the table and you were like crying on my shoulder, and I
guess
was still
remember
like
that. Yeah, you were still like
processing
dazed.
it. Yeah, just
And
like,
I just, I guess so.
so.
And I don't know what that means. I don't know. I'm sure I could have cried more often or whatever, but it's not super pleasant to do. So it wasn't like I was purposely being stoic other times.
No, I wasn't saying that. I remember those times, and I just wonder if that's like
that explosion of
Yeah.
emotion, and it was very concentrated times. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know what the
Well, it was
meaning-
a thing.
Yeah, it was a thing.
And
I don't
we
know
said
what
it, and so if you experienced it, you're not alone.
Right. I don't know what it means, and I know everyone's going to do it differently. I don't know. I definitely cried a lot less with the whole Charlie experience.
I mean, me as well, for various reasons.
Right, exactly.
Besides the fact that, like you said, crying is the worst.
Yeah. Some of it is you just know exactly what it's just so familiar. It's not like a shock grief. You know exactly what it feels like. You know what's going to happen. So I don't know. Some of that it's like Groundhog Day.
The worst.
It's just
Groundhog Day.
happening again. Yeah. So I don't know.
So I have a few Q&As from followers and listeners. So the first question is about the bonding process with these babies. Do you feel like you purposefully did something different to bond with these babies than you did with Micah or Jocelyn?
I think I had to consciously prevent myself from, I guess this is more on the negative side of it. I had to constantly prevent myself from trying to stay distant. I think that protective mechanism was very natural, where you're just trying not to hurt. And so compartmentalizing and not really thinking about it, and also almost ignoring it a little bit, sometimes feels better than attempting to closely bond with a baby you know you're going to lose, and a baby you know that when the baby comes, it's going to be heartbreaking. And so I think it was very natural for me to have that self-protection of not getting too involved. So I mean, but I recognize that that's not a good thing to do. It's definitely different knowing that you're gonna lose this baby versus a baby that you're really looking forward to
Raising.
Well, the other kids you're really looking forward to when you go into labor and when we go in the hospital and when we get to see the baby. That's going to be super exciting. And this is the polar opposite, where you're dreading, realizing that you're actually going into labor. You're dreading the drive to the hospital and the experience of the hospital and driving home with empty car seats. So I think just that expectation of what's going to happen does affect the way that you bond with the baby. I mean, it affected the way I bonded with the baby. I think I had to be a bit more intentional to allow myself to love, because it hurts. Yeah, which is very odd.
But I think
what?
Sorry, I was just going to say, I think even when I'm pregnant, even with the babies that we knew were healthy, you're not like a terribly like, ooh, touch the belly, talk to the belly. Like, that's not you so much. But
there's still just a sense of optimism and happiness, and like, this is great. This is a good thing, and I'm happy. I can't wait. Like, yeah.
But I think when Evie and Charlie were born, I didn't see that you had trouble holding them and kissing them. And
no.
Yeah, see, so maybe when I was pregnant, it was just kind of more like, I don't really want to think about this. But once you see them, I don't think you had any trouble saying,
not
like,
at all.
You're mine and I love you.
No, not at all. Yeah, no. Once the babies came, I mean, I very much wanted to have at least that small moment of time with them. But just, I guess, before the babies are born, it was hard to allow yourself to fully love them, because it just hurts to think about. I don't know, it's just, it's really hard.
Yeah.
On my end. And I mean, your experience is going to be a lot different, because you're carrying the baby.
Yeah, I can't physically separate
yourself.
Like, I can't.
But and then you also get some natural bonding by just carrying and having the baby with you all the time.
The baby.
So but for me it was, anyways.
How do you support Sarah? What was your strategy for supporting me throughout the process?
Oh, well, with Evie, I wasn't able to do a good job. And so I don't know, again, we were sort of in survival mode. I was worried about you, but you were doing well. And we had fortunately, we did have a pretty big support system. So a lot of other people helped me do that. With Charlie, fortunately, I was able to be around more. I don't know. How did I support you?
I think you made a conscious effort to, like, comfort me if I was crying.
Yeah.
And you didn't ever seem annoyed when I would just, like, cry for days. You know, like, right. I think you just were like,
I allowed the grief to.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which I think is, I don't know.
It's
that was
important.
what I needed. That was what I needed.
It's important, right. And then, I mean, how long did you just cry? I mean, you still have, we'll call it sad days. Yeah. You still have days where you're just in a funk. And with Evie, it was more intense, and it lasted for a longer period of time after she died, where you would just have sad days. And so, yeah, I think, I've tried to make it normal to have those days. It's normal to cry. It's normal to be sad, and you just let it happen. That's just part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So just trying to be present in the moments where
I need somebody.
Yeah, or if we need to talk about things or whatever. Trying to be empathetic, sympathetic, being able to talk about it.
And make eye contact. That's important.
Okay.
Like, don't be like, I'm crying, and you're like half trying to play a video game. That's kind of the worst.
Yeah, it is the worst.
So
I would never do that.
No.
That'd be extremely rude.
I know. That's why I'm saying you don't do that.
Right. Yeah, it's serious business.
Yes. So how about you? What support did you need from family and friends, and then did you receive that you found helpful? I know guys are different, so I don't really know. I don't know if I know how to help you with this question.
Yeah. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not sure. And I feel like I still am not sure. I still question how I did. I think especially with Charlie. With Evie, I was forced into a certain situation because of school. I was very busy, survival mode. I did everything in a certain way because I sort of had to. With Charlie, I'm not sure that I did a great job of handling it. And I don't think I knew what I needed. I don't think I talked to anybody about it. Did I? I
don't
didn't
know.
really talk to people
maybe.
about it. At work, it was nice. I talked to my coworker, my colleague Mike. I talked to him about it a few times at length. I talked to my other colleague Howie about it at length. So I did have two friends at work that I felt like I could open up to a little bit, which I appreciated. So I think that was part of working it out.
Yeah.
I got to talk to them about. I mean, some of the logistics. You're going to worry about certain things.
I mean, it's a pretty personal matter. It's not something you want to talk about with anybody.
Right. And I don't think I talked about it with very many people. I don't know. Yeah, there was a few people that I was able to talk it out with, which helped, and just vent some of the things that you're worried about. Because for a while, again, we were worried about the C-section. I think I talked to Mike and Howie about that. I was worried about just how that was going to go down, and so impersonal in the OR and that situation with a lot of people, working around you and stuff. So there were a few friends that I was able to talk it out with, which I appreciated. I think I do remember a few times with Evie, it was really nice to have my brothers there. And I felt like I talked to them about it just a little bit. And, what are my two younger brothers going to be able to say about it? Like, Luke's wasn't married, and Jed and Lauren didn't have kids yet when we lost Evie. So, it's not like they had super encouraging words, but just having people around was nice, was really nice. And I think especially with Evie, it was just so nice to have people around you who knew what you were going through and were there to give you a hug, or just giving you a knowing look, like, hey, I know things are hard, whatever. Sometimes it wouldn't say anything. It was just, an extended
like
handshake,
or like a squeeze just on the shoulder.
Yeah, it was just those little gestures are nice. One of my friends called me up one day when I was working on the house, and was kind of tearful on the other side of the phone, and just said, "I'm praying for you. I'm so sorry." And I think those comments were especially humbling and encouraging. How many people said that they were praying for us, and people that I would actually believe, had prayed for us. Not just, the Facebook comment, prayers or whatever,
right.
There's like a 1,000 of those comments underneath posts. But people actually saying, hey, we're praying for you and Sarah. And I especially appreciated people thinking about Sarah and praying for her and everything. So that was very encouraging.
This question says, did you ever feel left out? So I don't know if maybe that means like left out as far as people maybe forgetting that you were going through something.
I would say definitely not. Just for me personally, I think I was acutely aware of the fact that no matter how much I was grieving about it, I assumed Sarah was going to have a much harder time just by the nature of being a mom, being physically connected to that baby for 9 months. And I just knew I would be fine. In the end, I would be fine. And I think I was always more concerned about Sarah and how she was going to do. So I think sometimes I sort of just ignored my own. I think especially with Charlie, I was kind of ignoring my own feelings, which I'm not really sure how healthy this was. This is just what I kind of did, but I was definitely more focused on Sarah and how you were doing, and what you were going through, and making sure you were okay. And I wasn't too worried about myself, I guess. I think some of the things I didn't deal with as well as I should have, probably because of that, but I didn't feel left out. Yeah, I mean, everybody's different, but there's no way that the dad is going to be affected as deeply as a mother. It's just, I think that's my opinion.
How are you doing now, and how can loved ones show support to you now?
Again, I mean, so many things in our lives are so good. It would be, I don't know. It'd be, I don't know. I'm very content with so many things in our lives. What can I be? I don't know. I'm not even sure what I'm trying to say here.
Maybe that you
I'd
sort of.
I would feel ungrateful for all of the things. Yeah. It doesn't feel worth drawing attention to myself. I would feel ungrateful for dwelling on those moments. I don't know. I mean, our lives are really good. We have great kids. Hopefully we'll be able to have a healthy child in the future. I don't know that I need any special support now. I don't know.
I think one thing that helps is just knowing, I mean, our family is all local.
Mm-hmm.
So just knowing that they're around, and that if you needed to call your dad and talk something out,
I don't feel isolated.
Yeah.
And so I don't have that feeling.
You have resources very available to you.
Yeah, I have people that I know that I could go to their house day or night and we could chat about it. And I know I have those friends, and certainly my dad and all that sort of thing. If I ever needed something, there are a lot of people that I could call on, which is nice. I certainly don't feel isolated. I certainly don't feel like I've had to deal with any of this by myself, or we've had to deal with any of this by ourselves. So that's really nice.
And here's the last question. What would your advice be to a dad who's in your shoes? What would you say would be like the key to survival?
That's a tough that's a tough question. Some of it is just going to be being in tune with your wife, and I guess most of us guys want to be able to do something, and so I guess you're doing something by being in tune to your wife and being there for her and trying to figure out, do what you can to help her. And I think it's probably one of the most important things. It also helps you feel like you're not just, like you talked about, asked if, how feeling helpless. So at least you can do something by actively being supportive to your wife. I think continuing to do a good job at whatever you're doing, career-wise or work-wise, I think is important. Because at least, again, you're taking care of your family by doing that. So you don't want to bury yourself into work to make it go away. But providing stability when a lot of things are unstable is definitely nice if it's possible. I don't know. Do you have any comments?
I think that's good.
Yeah, just be present, be there. Don't be afraid to experience it. Don't be afraid to love the baby. And it's definitely a very volatile situation emotionally. I think we did a good job with not taking it out on each other. I know when we were in school, our emotions ran pretty raw because I was gone so much, and so there was a lot of there was a lot of things that we didn't get to deal with very well together the year after Evie died that we sort of had to deal with afterwards. But it's definitely easy to have high emotions and get into arguments or just not have the patience to deal with each other or whatever. But definitely it helps if you can get through it as a team and recognize that you're going to be more likely to be irritable or maybe
sensitive.
Yeah, very sensitive, or not be able to enjoy things that you used to enjoy as much. Even just little after, I mean, some things will never, I guess that's the other important thing, is to realize that neither of you will be the same person again. And that's not saying that you won't have fun again and your personality will change, but just certain things won't ever be the same. You won't have that blind optimism of youth. That definitely goes away. The naivety goes away. But even small little things, like after Evie died, and for the longest time, Sarah could not watch, as far as like movies or TV shows, could not watch anything serious. And so, when we were together with no kids, and then even after Micah was born, I mean, we'd pretty much watch all sorts of movies and shows together and everything. And it's not like you loved the thrillers and those kind of suspenseful movies, but we watched them together. But after Evie died, I remember there were lots of movies that I knew I was going to end up watching by myself because you were not going to watch a serious movie. And it was like
I couldn't handle it emotionally.
Right.
I couldn't enter into the emotions of that movie.
Anything that cranked up the emotions, it was just too much to deal with. And so even those little things, you're still not the same as you were before. And we watch stuff together.
Yeah.
But just recognizing that life is going to change in some important ways and some not really. I mean, it's not important really that we're not going to watch the next horror movie together or whatever. That's not important. But just recognizing things are going to change, and that's okay. That's just part of life. And you're going to change, and that's okay. So just being patient with those things, recognizing them, and then being patient as you work through it.
Well, you totally stole my thunder.
Wow.
Because
thank you. I was reading your notes.
Gone.
I was reading your notes.
Ugh, I should have kept them hidden.
Yeah, no, I wasn't reading your notes. Well, go ahead and reiterate.
Well, no, I was going to start asking the question of how do you think we survived as a couple these last two times? And so you kind of touched on it a little bit. Is there anything else that, how do you think we survived? What was the key to our survival? And I don't know, surviving it together.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it was easy for us to stick together, to go through it together and lean on each other. It was easy for us to do that. So I guess that made it simple. When Evie died, it was probably more of an example of how not to do it, even though I was forced to not be present. The year after Evie died, I was gone a lot. I was busy a lot. And so it was a lot harder on you. And I couldn't really help that. But that was really hard. And unfortunate timing that I had to be gone so much. But making you go through so much of that by yourself and being kind of lonely, I mean, that would be sort of how not to do it if you can help it. So by not being able to grieve together and be together and help each other, that's sort of what you end up getting, is a lot higher emotions and then having to deal with things after they've already been an issue for a long time. Because once I graduated, I sort of had to learn how to be a normal person again anyway, because I've been in fifth gear for 2.5 years in school going full bore. So I had to figure out how to downshift anyway. But then there's a lot of things that you'd been dealing with since Evie and throughout all of school that we hadn't been able to really address very well and be together. And I don't know.
I don't remember that part. Maybe that was...
Yeah, maybe you don't remember that much because you yourself didn't change, but I had to deal with it because all of a sudden I was home again and I was having a normal schedule. And so I was with you more and home more. So that's when I really had to figure out how to be a good husband again and everything.
Well, I feel like you're being hard on yourself with you're saying not helping me through grieving with Evie.
I did my best, but I was gone a lot.
And I don't think he did such a horrible job.
Right, I'm glad that that's the case, but just the necessity of the situation was that I was gone a lot, which is not good. That's probably the worst time for me to be gone was.
But you couldn't.
2 months. Right, and maybe some of that helped you mentally that you knew I couldn't help it, but you're also probably. You're an extremely strong person. I don't think very many people would have handled it as well as you did. So. Well,
I obviously didn't do it by myself. And what I think when you say I wasn't there, when I think you weren't there for me, and I don't mean that in a bad way.
Yeah.
Just that's the fact. You weren't able to be as present, but I feel like that made me have to lean on the Lord more. If you had been around, I would have gone to you first with my thoughts and you first with my concerns, but I didn't have that option, and so I feel like I was forced. That sounds like a bad word, but
the easy way out was taken away, maybe.
Yeah, and so instead of processing to you, I just processed to the Lord a lot more than I would have. So I don't look on it as something.
That's great though.
Well, I just don't look on that as something bad.
Yeah.
I feel like it was beneficial. Like you said earlier, maybe a blessing in disguise. Just forced to, I don't know, bring it before the Lord, which should have been my first instinct anyway.
Right. But that's, I'm glad that's what happened, and I'm glad that you chose this healthiest and strongest coping strategy available to you. And so I'm glad. That was a very tough time, and you did extremely well. And I think with Charlie, it was just both of us knew the path that we were on. We were familiar with the grief, and that we just sort of stuck together. And there was so much other stuff to distract us with. We were selling a house, we were buying a house, we were getting a job. There's a lot of work to be done, and things to do, and things to plan, and phone calls to make. And the kids were with Evie, Micah was, 18 to 22 months. Mm-hmm. And so our world was small, and it could be really quiet. And then with my pregnancy with Charlie, Micah was in preschool. He had friends. He needed to get out of the house. And I had two. I was busier. We were just completely different. It was just really different. Anyway. Mm-hmm. But I made a little list of how I think we survived, or some key things. You can chime in. Yeah. Let's hear it. Definitely our faith. Knowing that even when these babies passed away, that's not the end. And, knowing that God is sovereign, and, he was in control. Right. That, I think, gave us comfort. Also, I think we just had a mutual understanding, which maybe we talked about it. I don't know if we actually had a conversation, but a mutual understanding that I needed to try, for your sake, I needed to try to not dwell and talk about it as much as maybe I wanted to. And funny. Your understanding, and my understanding, hang on, let me start. Yeah. You understood that I didn't want to talk about it every day. Right, and you needed to understand that I wanted to talk about it every day. So we had to, so somehow we had to meet in the middle, where it was just I
when I'm talking about it, I need you to listen.
Right.
And and you trusted me that I wouldn't only inundate you with sad pregnancy
I'm sad
stuff.
today.
So
Right.
does that make sense?
Yeah.
Did it come out right?
Yeah. My natural inclination was to focus on what we had to do, to focus on the good things, and deal with the hospital trip when we had to deal with it. But you're not going to separate it that cleanly.
Yeah.
So yeah, when you had to talk about it, we talked about it.
Right.
And it was
And
fine.
I knew that we couldn't talk about it every second.
Right. And since we didn't talk about it every single day, then I was more receptive to have conversations when they came up.
Yeah, so even though, gosh, I don't know, even though I wanted to be, I guess, all consumed with it, and this is mostly with Evie,
Right.
mostly, I just had to have a realization that it couldn't be that way. So, anyway, I don't know if that's helpful.
Yeah.
And in general, I think we just knew that we didn't want this to rule us.
Right.
And that this wouldn't be, it was a very defining moment in our life, but it didn't need to define every moment of our life.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah, we could talk about other things. We could go on dates. We could still laugh. We could still watch shows that were, funny,
right.
just not serious.
We already knew, we had already recovered to, whatever extent we recovered. We've made it through one child lost. So, we knew we could do it again. Sometimes it feels like with Evie, you can't really see very far past, when she died, what's going to happen now? And, you have no idea. Everything
Right.
seems like in a fog. And then you work through it and things get better and you change, but, life moves on and you continue on. And then with Charlie, we knew at some point we would be okay again.
Right.
So yeah, it's a little bit different.
Yeah. It's to just view it as a season, maybe.
Yeah.
And not, I don't know. I mean, that's still hard.
Yeah, I mean, it never goes away. You still have waves of sadness and remembering things and
like you said, moments of we should have 4 kids. That's never going to go away. I mean, even when they're 20, whatever, we'll be gosh, we should have one graduating this year.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure.
Yeah,
I'll think that at least.
Yeah,
I'm
there'll
sure.
still be some sense of loss and regret of things that you don't get to do and things that you'll miss out on.
Yeah.
And that's good. I mean, that's normal. But at the same time, that you're not thinking about that every day. And if you are, then you're not, in our situation, then you're missing out on the 2 kids you have. And
Right.
that would be a complete shame.
Yes. And granted, for a time, at least for probably a week after Charlie came, we had family that came around every day.
Yeah.
So that I could
That was nice.
kind of, what's the word? Dwell. So I could kind of,
you're gonna
just indulge in my sadness. I mean, I think that's healthy.
Right. It's
and I
just
needed
part of the
that.
grieving. Yeah.
Yeah.
You're going to have an acute grieving process when you first find out the week after you lose your child. There's going to be, the first few weeks are extremely difficult.
So yeah, just letting yourself kind of be saturated in grief for a time, but then realizing it has to end at some point.
Or it has to at least be curbed. You still have to
Right.
function.
I guess not end.
At
like
least
you
have
said.
to be
Right.
function.
Right,
You still
right.
need to be able to do your job. You need to be able to be a parent to the kids you have. You need to be able to be a husband for your wife.
Yeah. Life goes on.
Yeah, and not in a morbid way. Life can't end at that time. You have to figure out how to be the best version of yourself after that happens.
There's a quote that I stumbled upon on the internet. I think it's from the show called The Midwife, which I don't watch, but I like the quote. I feel like I can still quote it. It said, it was referring to like someone's advice to a girl who was grieving the loss of her husband or something, and she said, you just keep living until you feel alive again. And I really like that. I feel like that is a pretty good description.
That is pretty good, actually.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's like the whole behavioral therapy philosophy of depression, right? Where even if you don't feel like doing something, you go through the motion, fake it until you make it. You do something, and at some point your emotions follow your actions. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you just start doing the things that you need to do and that you want to do, and it does. Just doing those things helps.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, you kind of already shared a heart lesson. Is there anything else that you feel like the Lord has continued to speak to your heart? I know you said "It Is Well" was kind of your theme, at least for Evie
and Charlie. Because I sung that in church a few months before Charlie came, because it just felt the same. It felt the same. I was being faced with basically the same situation, and it was sort of like, what now? Like, are you still okay? Or, I still felt the same. So that it is well with my soul. It was very deeply set in my heart for both times. And then even this, you can look up the story behind the song. Also resonated because now I'm forgetting.
Songwriter.
Yeah, the songwriter,
the hymnalist.
This very important person. But he lost his family
in a shipwreck.
Right? And so then that was his song to the Lord after he lost his family. So and
his entire family. I think it was his wife and all
I think wife and
children,
whatever children he had or whatever. And it just resonated with me that that songwriter was going through a very similar situation, if not worse, and he, in dealing with his grief, was able to tell the Lord, "It is well with my soul." And that's just extremely deep, very moving. So that always resonated with me. If you haven't read that story, go Wikipedia it or something.
I'll put a link on my...
Yeah, you should find it and link it.
Yeah, sure.
That's definitely worth reading. And, of course, the Job thing always felt very powerful. Just the realization that it's not just about, like, your tiny little... it's not about yourself or your tiny little circle of people you know or family. Like, there's a much bigger world, and God is watching, and you don't know what kind of friends or family also are watching and seeing what
being influenced,
right. You just don't know who can be affected by what you do or how you handle it. And certainly the Lord is watching, and he's rooting for you to do well and to somehow glorify him, even though things are hard. And I just, that was always very powerful thought was, even though Job was getting wrecked, God was still, number one, God still cared very much, and he was very intently watching and sort of rooting him on, like, come on, Job.
Yeah.
Make me proud. So I always, those two things are very powerful, and they still kind of stick with me.
Well, thank you for
Thanks,
sharing. Thanks for talking with me and sharing your heart. And I think, I hope this can be a good resource for somebody walking a difficult road.
Yeah, I hope so.
So thanks.
Thank you, babe. Love you.
Love you. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this episode of the Heart Lessons podcast. Josh and I were kind of joking that it was like a mini counseling session for us because I don't think we had ever sat down and just processed through what had happened with both babies, you know, from like start to finish and both experiences back to back. So it was actually really cathartic for us and really healing, I think, for both of us. And, you know, contrary to what it might seem, we don't actually sit down and talk to each other about it for, you know, hours at a time. Sometimes just snippets here and there, and, you know, even days without saying anything about it. So it was actually kind of a big blessing to us. So I hope you found some encouragement, and I hope that if you are turning to this episode because of your own journey, I hope that you found some wisdom and something that you thought could help you through your journey. I know Josh and I talked a little bit about our faith and how that carried us through it all, and I've mentioned it a few episodes, in a few different episodes, but honestly, if you never listen to another episode and you never hear another word I say, I just want you to know that Jesus loves you and he wants you. And if you've never accepted Christ as your Savior, please email me, sarahjrieke@gmail.com, and I would be just absolutely thrilled to lead you to him and the promises that he can give you, and the promise that he can give you for heaven one day. So, you know, if you're unsure of where you're headed or what your relationship with Christ is, don't leave it at that. Please pursue him, and he is definitely pursuing you. Thank you for supporting the Heart Lessons podcast and for listening and for giving feedback and reviews and ratings. I appreciate it. Truly, nothing gives me more encouragement than to know that the work I'm doing here is encouraging somebody else. So thank you for letting me know. And if you know somebody who could use this resource, either this episode or any other episode of the Heart Lessons podcast, please feel free to share it and let your friends know about it, and take some time to let me know. You can find me on Instagram, you can find me on Twitter, you can leave a comment on my blog or send me an email. And I would love to learn more about you and more about those listening and reading. So thank you again, and I hope you have a great week. And as always, I hope you were able to come away with a heart lesson that you can use to help your heart draw closer to the Lord.